song by Narottam Das Thakur. And it's a lamentation, feeling the separation from the great acharyas. So Mother Kaivalya Prabhu will grace us with singing this beautiful song. Kishore Das Babaji ki jai. So I'll read the translation. He who brought the treasure of divine love, and who was filled with compassion and mercy? Where has such a personality as Srinivas Acharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? Where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against a rock and enter into fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all these devotees and those in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps. So this is the mood of a Vaishnava feeling separation from the great souls. And actually, very interesting, Narottam had discussed a little bit here that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, who was our grandfather's spiritual master, the spiritual master of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, he had great difficulty in convincing Gaura Kishore Das Babaji to accept him as a disciple, and I'll explain that. But Narottam Das, who wrote this song, had a similar problem when he approached Lokanath, who was a similar, very sort of deep renunciate. So there's an interesting parallel there. First I'd like to, there's right here written is the pranam prayers to Gaura Kishore Das Babaji, and I can say one word and then you all repeat. Namo, Namo, Gaura, Gaura. And you can also envision in your mind offering, at the end of this, offering flower petals at his lotus feet. I'll start again. Namo, Namo, Gaura, Gaura, Vishwaraya, Vishwaraya, Sakshat, Sakshat, Vairagya, Vairagya, Murtaye, Murtaye, Vibralamba, Vibralamba, Rasam Bodhe, Rasam Bodhe, Padam Bujaya, Padam Bujaya, Te, Namaha, Namaha, Shri Gaura Kishore Das Babaji Ki Jai. Now we're throwing flowers at his lotus feet. Hare Krishna. So the translation to that is, I offer homage to Srila Gaura Kishore Das Babaji, whose very form of renunciation and the ocean of the mellow of separation from Krishna. So, Gaura Kishore Das Babaji is what?
It's translated different on the board.
He's the personified period. Personified what? I don't know what.
Should be renunciation personified.
Yeah, well, it's similar. Just different. Yeah. Thank you for pointing out.
Did you write it?
No.
No, I didn't think so.
Two different books.
Yeah.
The essence is the same.
Yes.
Okay? So, so Gaura Kishore Das Babaji was married for some time, and he was actually involved in some kind of agricultural trade. When his wife died, he decided to go to Vrindavan. And he was born, he actually was living in Bangladesh, in a part of Bangladesh which even today, I don't remember the name of the place, but it's like 64 villages of basically what you would call quote-unquote Hindus, surrounded by Muslims. And when he went to Vrindavan, he stayed there for 30 years, and he was very fond. He says that it's said that Ranganath Das Goswami, he inspired him to write this song, or to sing this song. And this is just a few verses of it, or a few lines from it. It's quite long. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada printed it in one of his literatures. It goes, Kote ko prema mayi, Radhe Radhe. Radhe Radhe go jaya, Radhe Radhe. Deka diya prana rako, Radhe Radhe. Toma kanga, Taive take, Radhe Radhe. Radhe Vrindavana, Vilasini Radhe Radhe. So it just keeps going on, calling out for Radhe, Radhe, Radhe. Here's the translation. Oh Radhe, Radhe, where are you? Oh goddess of ecstatic love. Oh Radhe, Radhe, all glories unto you. Oh Radhe, Radhe. Oh Radhe, Radhe, please show yourself to me and thereby maintain my life. Your most despicable fallen servant calls out to you. Oh Radhe, Radhe, oh Radhe, oh artful enjoyer of Vrindavan, oh Radhe, 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 oh enchanter of Krishna, Krishna's mind, oh Radhe, oh Radhe, oh Radhe, the crest jewel of your 8 main girlfriends, oh Radhe, 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 oh delightful daughter of Maharaj Vishibhanu, oh Radhe, Radhe. So he was in this mood of separation and was constantly walking around the different forests within the Brajabhumi. He stayed, he never had a bhajan kutir, he lived there for 30 years. In other words, he never built a little cottage or anything like that. He would just stay under trees. He would practice what they call madhukari, which means that he would go anywhere between 1 to 7 houses and collect alms. Like it's compared to a bumblebee. You see a bumblebee flies, goes from one flower to the next until it gets sufficient pollen. So when he would get sufficient amount of rice, he would then put that rice with some Jamuna water in a clay pot. And if he couldn't find that, then he would simply subsist on the dust of Govardhan, of the dust of the Jamuna. He was his renunciation, he chanted 200,000 names. In other words, I think it's approximately, or it is 120 or 128 rounds of the holy name every day. He saw all the residents of Vrindavan as great transcendental personalities, as representatives of Radha and Krishna. He would offer obeisances to every person, every tree, every blade of grass, every monkey, every animal, cow, whatever he saw. He was constantly offering dandavats to everyone he saw. And his renunciation was, he took initiation, Babaji initiation, from a disciple of Jagannath Das Babaji. This particular person that he took initiation from was called Bhagavat Babaji. A Babaji is one who basically is a Bhajananandi. He's practicing just hearing and chanting, lives a life of poverty, and has no possessions, and nor does he desire any possessions. He would wear only very thrown away cloth that he would find. Some of the descriptions I'm not going to mention because it might sound odd, but he was very, very, just to say that his renunciation is not to be imitated. And the renunciation couldn't be maintained unless he was actually on a very ecstatic, transcendental level of Baba. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that it's an offense for someone to take Babaji initiation unless they're experiencing Baba, which is the highest ecstatic form of Krishna, prema. So he was on that level. And at a certain point, he became inspired to go to Navadvip, the place of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he visited all of the pastimes, all the places where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu engaged in his transcendental pastimes. Now, he also became very attracted to going and listen to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's discussions on the Bhagavatam. And he did that on a regular basis. And then he actually became a servant of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was his spiritual uncle. He was initiated by Jagannath Das Babaji. At least he had accepted Jagannath Das Babaji as his spiritual master. The type of initiation that was being performed at that time was slightly different than what Srila Prabhupada introduced with the fire yagya and chanting on the japa beads. And I'll describe that when I describe Bhaktisiddhanta's initiation. So in other words, he was a godbrother of Bhagavat Babaji, who Jagannath Das Babaji had accepted an initiation from. And Gaura Kishore Das Babaji shunned any kind of materialistic people. He would do very odd things, like he actually resided in a latrine to keep away materialistic people. He didn't want anyone to come and bother him for material blessings. And so the smell would keep people away. But occasionally, sometimes people would ask him for material benefits. A man was asking for blessings to get married. And he told this man that you should serve your wife. You should see your wife as your master. And you should offer obeisances to her. You like that?
Yeah.
And I was trying to score points with the ladies. But he meant this, that you should see everyone as, not because, the point was, that Srila Prabhupada explains, is that you don't see her as an object of enjoyment. You see her, or just your servant. You are to serve her. And you should approach marriage with the proper attitude. You know, that this is a bona fide ashram, but it's meant to bring about, you can't become a parent unless you can guarantee the liberation of your children. In other words, you have to become a guru to your children. The mother is considered a guru. And the father is also a guru. But in this case, he was telling him, it was something else he said, I wish I could remember. He said some very interesting things. Some of them are a little hard to, but in any case, he had a very amazing ability to understand. He was Trikalagya. He could see past, present, and future. He could understand, though, also people's hidden motives, or that people that were trying to use him for some material. One man was asking Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada to train him on how to speak the Bhagavatam. And this person was already famous for speaking the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And so he said, I can't do it unless I get permission from my spiritual master. And Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada went to Gaura Kishore and he said, you should shut the door in his face. He has his plate already ready, meaning the plate for donations. He wanted to be a professional Bhagavatam reciter. He wanted to learn from Bhaktisiddhanta so that he could be expert enough so that it'll become a business for him. And he shunned this kind of misuse of the recitation of the scriptures. So when Bhaktisiddhanta, he was given the instruction by his father, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, to take initiation from Gaura Kishore Das Babaji. Now, one thing is that you have to understand, for those, I don't know, how many people are new to the Hare Krishna movement here? Yeah, so, but this, maybe they don't, everyone realize that, then I'm just talking to you. And you're important. Yeah. I see potential in you, young lady. No, it's people think that this is some cult, that just some people in America think that this is some new religion that came. This is a tradition that goes back thousands of years. And there is a chain of spiritual masters, a disciplic succession of virtuous, perfectly realized individuals who have seen the truth, and they all serve at the feet of their teacher or their spiritual master. And then they accept disciples and they pass the knowledge down. This is what Krishna has instructed in the Bhagavad Gita, that you should find someone who has seen the truth and inquire from him submissively, render service to him. Such a self-realized soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. There's another verse in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. It says, Evam parampara patam imam rajasya vidu. That this parampara system, it starts with Lord Brahma, the creator of the material universe, who learned from Krishna. He instructed Narada Muni. Narada Muni instructed Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is the compiler of all the Vedas, and the Vedas are the scriptures. And all of this knowledge is being received through the disciplic chain. And there are many interesting personalities in this chain, and it's not all one cookie-sized cutter personality. They all are very dynamic personalities, but they're all pure devotees of the Lord, experiencing the highest levels of transcendental realization and the highest levels of pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Gaura Kishore, okay, so he's a Babaji. Now, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, his spiritual uncle, and his Shiksha Guru, who he's serving, and I've seen the place, and anybody who's been to Bhakti Vinod's house in Mayapur, you see there's a concrete little structure, and I don't think it's much longer than from that place to that place, from that pole to that pole, and it's about that high, and it's about this wide. And Gaura Kishore Das Babaji resided in that little concrete structure, just a few feet away from where Bhakti Vinod was in meditation and doing his chanting and writing. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur was a very successful magistrate, had written many books, many poems, many songs. He was a very prolific writer and a very well-respected magistrate. All the British were competing to have Bhakti Vinod Thakur in their district as the judge, because they really trusted his honesty and his understanding of the law. There was one person that was he had some mystic power, and Bhakti Vinod was interested in this person because this person was claiming to be God, and that's why he wanted to deal with this person. The British were concerned is because this person had a big following, and he said that he had the power to kick the British out of India. So, but they turned to Bhakti Vinod, and Bhakti Vinod was not going to stand for this guy. And the story goes that the man had some powers, and he could create, Bhakti Vinod's daughter, I believe, became very, very sick, high fever, and everyone was thinking, well, maybe you should just let him go. Just let him go. Don't. Maybe he does, he has mystic powers. And he says, no. And then even Bhakti Vinod himself became very sick. He still was determined, I'm not going to allow this man to claim to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's just some mystic trick. It's just a maneuver of the material energies. So eventually the man is convicted of treason or some charge like that. And then when he's put into the jail, a doctor comes, and the man had long hair. And so the man cuts off his hair, and once he cut off his hair, the man lost all of his mystic powers. Somehow or other, the hair, all of his mystic powers was generated from his hair. And this man had been fasting for several weeks while in jail. So now he has no more mystic powers. He's lost his hair. So now he's starving. And shortly after that, he dies of malnutrition. God dies of malnutrition. You know, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the maintainer over all, you know, who gives us our daily bread, he dies of malnutrition because he lost his hair. So Bhaktivinoda so my point is, Jagannath Das Babaji is illiterate. Bhakti Siddhanta, Bhaktivinoda's son, is one of the most erudite scholars of the last several centuries. If you try to read any of his writings, you need a dictionary nearby. He had a better command of the English language than most of the best scholars at Cambridge or Oxford or Harvard. And the discussions of philosophy that he presents are so on such a high level and with such strong conviction that he could not be defeated. But yet, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his father, insisted that he take initiation from Gaura Kishore Das Babaji because he had to have a spiritual master for the disciplic succession to continue. And Bhaktivinoda had come along at a time when the teachings of Lord Chaitanya were sort of almost covered over. And he was re-establishing this disciplic succession, this parampara. So the problem is that Krishnadas Gaura Kishore has said, no, I don't want any disciples. So Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada would go to him and say, beg for, I need to take initiation from you. I need a spiritual master, and I can see that you're the one person that I can surrender to. And Gaura Kishore says something like, well, I'll have to ask Mahaprabhu. In other words, I'll have to ask Lord Chaitanya. I'll let you know. So then a day or two goes by, Bhaktisiddhanta comes back and says, well, did you get your answer? And he said, well, I forgot. I forgot to ask. And this went on for some time. Sometimes it said it went on for like 2 or 3 times, but sometimes it says it went on for like 12 times. But Bhaktisiddhanta was undaunted because every time he'd go back to Bhaktivinoda, his father, and his father was very strong and very, insistent that you must, otherwise there's no point to your life. Your life is useless. I don't care how much you've learned, how much you've accomplished in your... And he had already become an extremely well-accomplished astrologer, mathematician, was well-respected in the world of education, even by the English. And Bhaktivinoda saying, your life is useless unless you can surrender totally and have Gaura Kishore Das Babaji accept you as his disciple. Finally, Gaura Kishore does relent. Because he can see the desperation in Bhaktisiddhanta, and he can see the devotion and the utter hopelessness that he's experiencing. And the way he received initiation is that Gaura Kishore allowed him to touch and take the dust of his lotus feet. He was very, very strict about no one touching his feet or no one taking the dust of his feet. One time someone did, and he says, good, I hope your life is ruined, or something to that effect. I hope now you are doomed. And he said, that's what he said. Now you are doomed. Instead of thinking that he's getting blessings from Gaura Kishore said, no, you're doomed. But in fact, if he's getting the dust of somebody like Gaura Kishore Das Babaji, he was very fortunate. But Gaura Kishore was trying to dissuade people from coming to him for material benefits. He would hide in so many ways, in so many places. And he didn't want to be contaminated by... he was very careful about what food he ate. He was very careful about who he associated with. And even one person that he was associating with, he found out that he had eaten at a feast, and the feast had been paid for by someone that had money from maybe not such a legitimate source. And he said, for 3 days, I do not want to see you. I will not associate with you. I mean, he took things, he saw things very, all the subtleties of how you can be contaminated by material desires and by material association. So Gaura Kishore Das Babaji, although illiterate, becomes the guru of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. I'll read just a little bit of what Gaura Kishore does, what Bhakti Vinod says upon receiving initiation from Gaura Kishore Das Babaji. And Bhakti Siddhanta Prabhupada is our grandfather. He is the spiritual master of our spiritual master. If Gaura Kishore had not accepted him as his disciple, then the lineage, the disciplic succession was at great risk, at great jeopardy. We would not be here today if Gaura Kishore Das Babaji had not accepted Bhakti Siddhanta Prabhupada. And it was not a done deal. It was hanging by a thread. He was very, very renounced. I can't really, in words, explain just, and there's a confirmation. I can't actually explain the length of how he tried to avoid any kind of materialistic people or materialistic desires. He was totally absorbed in his own bhajan. Now, but there's the Gostinanandi. The Gostinandis are those who have the same inner renunciation, but they go out and they preach and set a practical example. Not everybody can be like Gaura Kishore Das Babaji. That's not our movement. But it is a part of our movement. This is not just, we're not all just one brainwashed robot zombies. There's many levels to the Krishna consciousness movement, to this Vaishnava philosophy. But here's something that Bhakti Siddhanta said. There's a whole bunch here, but it says, I have been busy within this temporal sphere, trying to bring sense gratification within the grasp of my hand. I often thought that I am obtaining the objects of sensual enjoyment. All my shortcomings would be fulfilled. Certainly I attained various rarely achieved goals, but my own personal deficiencies were never mitigated. In this material world, I have had the association of very high-class, well-born people, but noting their multiple inadequacies, I could not offer them praise. Seeing me in such a lamentable condition at such a time of adversity, the most merciful Lord Gaurasundar, Lord Chaitanya, gave permission to his own dearest devotees, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Gaura Kishore Das Babaji, to grant their blessings to me, because I was always intoxicated with worldly false ego, wanting to be lauded again and again. I was depriving myself of my own true benefit. But due to the influence of pious activities enacted in previous births, I came in contact with Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, my spiritual well-wisher, my Prabhu, Srila Gaura Kishore Das Babaji, who often visited Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and stayed with him. Out of compassion for others, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur pointed out my Prabhu, Srila Gaura Kishore Das Babaji. Upon seeing whom the extent of my worldly false ego diminished, I knew that all living entities who have taken the human form of life were fallen and low like myself. But by gradually observing the spiritual fiber of my master, I realized that only a Vaishnava could reside in this mortal world and be of exemplary character. And so then he says, my Gurudev mercifully told me, reject your knowledge, purity, and aristocracy and come close to me. Don't go anywhere else. So this was the mood of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati This is just a summary, and I just want, I don't feel qualified in any way, shape, or form to speak on this subject matter, to speak about such exalted personalities. All I'm doing is trying to organize a presentation from Srila Prabhupada's writings, and this book is a compilation of by Bhakti Vikas Swami, one of our godbrothers, one of Prabhupada's disciples. So on this day, on this auspicious day of Gaura Kishore Das Babaji's disappearance day, we can all be very, very grateful to Bhakti Vinod for having such a wonderful son as Bhakti Siddhanta, and to have the insight to have him initiated by Gaura Kishore Das Babaji. We're all very grateful to Gaura Kishore Das Babaji for giving Bhakti Siddhanta shelter, so then he could go on and establish his Gaudiya Math preaching and inspire our spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And it was his instructions that Srila Prabhupada, our Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to translate these literatures to English and come to the West. And then it was translated into every language, practically in the world. And we were all given this very confidential knowledge and this wonderful mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And then we will be given some transcendental prasadam. Hare Krishna. So it's 1:30, my time is up. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hare Rama.
Thank you.